Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Jamie Schmidt, the founder and former CEO of Schmidt's Naturals, the natural personal care brand that scaled from her kitchen to a nine-figure acquisition with Unilever 7 years later. Jamie grew Schmidt's Naturals from the humble beginnings of local Oregon flea markets into a household name lining the shelves of 30,000 retailers in over 30 countries. Jamie, whenever I pick up one of your products, I see ingredients that are a little foreign to these mass market brands like charcoal, magnesium, rose, vanilla, lavender, sage. Yummy, actually. So I'm curious, 10 years ago, natural deodorant didn't really work. I mean, it didn't really smell good at all. And I'm very curious, how did you crack the code? How did you turn this business into a pretty powerful brand? Welcome, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Dean. It's fun to be here. I think where the magic was is that I was solving a problem for myself. I was pregnant at the time, so I was paying closer attention to the products I was using on my skin. I also had a personal frustration with the deodorants that were on the market, and so I thought, you know what, let's try to make one. That was one of many things I was making at the time. I was living in Portland, Oregon. It's the most creative city in the country, potentially in the world. Everybody's an artist, creator, maker. And so I just loved that culture and jumped right in, making all sorts of things. And, one of them being personal care products. So when the opportunity came to create my own deodorant, it just made sense. And so I jumped in, started doing some research on different ingredients and how they, impact the body chemistry, and came up with something that worked really well and, surprisingly just as good, if not better than, what was on the market at the time. And looking back on it, it's pretty crazy to think that, I was in this tiny little house in Portland, right? Like this non-sophisticated lab, which was basically my kitchen stovetop, cracked the code on something that people were excited to use.
You cracked that amazing code. So if I read the ingredients, I won't tell you what brand I just used, but I'm wondering, is my deodorant depressing me? I don't know. It's like some of the ingredients in these products are still, kind of sketchy, quite frankly. But so we can kind of jump into that later. Mass market brands are still struggling with this category across the board, not just your category. But you really led the movement. This is a totally different era now, kind of bringing brands, products like this to life. And now corporates can't seem to get enough of us. They're stumbling over themselves to buy companies like yours. And acquisitions both in health and beauty and wellness, food and beverage. I'm involved in a private equity group that is funding a lot of the really cool food emerging companies, not just the startups. And it's interesting now, is they're all, maybe you can take credit for this too. A lot of them are getting tech valuations, which is, I'm used to, but the health, beauty, wellness, food, beverage industry, they weren't used to that. They don't seem to mind though.
Yeah, it is pretty nuts to look back and think that, a company that started in a tiny kitchen caught the attention of somebody like Unilever. But they were for good reason, right? I think, one of the secrets to Schmidt's success was that we really kept an open mind to who our customer was, right? So when you think naturals, you might think niche, you think a certain type of user. But for me, I saw opportunity beyond that, right? Like I thought people in the middle America and people who otherwise didn't have access or exposure to natural, healthy products, regularly deserved it, right? And so that was always at the forefront of my thinking as I scaled. So that meant tapping into distribution channels, retailers like Walmart or Costco, where other naturals, particularly those, kind of coming up behind me, wanted nothing to do with those channels. And so in doing that, we started to really make natural more normal. And there's so much more work to be done. I read a stat the other day that less than 10% of people still were using natural personal care products. So there's a huge, untapped customer base, which is great. But it's grown so much since when I started, 10 years ago.
Right. And back then it really was fringe. And 10 years before that, it was like, what did they used to make fun of? Granola crunchers. And, it was a niche inside a niche. And it's becoming mass market, but yeah, still under 10%. such an awareness about things that are good and healthy for you, both, inside on top of your body, like hair products and things you eat is, it seems to be continuing to trend up. Maybe talk about that in a bit, but the, back to the entrepreneurs, I mean, it seems like many of them should thank you for kind of paving the way for, you really hacked yourself into this mass market scaling funding. And so many of them are looking for that now. How do I scale? How do I get great funding? How do I get liquidity? And how do I, how would I get a great exit like Jamie? And many of them that I talk to, you're right. They don't necessarily want to go the mass market route. There's like, well, we really don't want to be in in Walmart. We're more of a, Target kind of brand, or we're more this or more that. So should all brands look for mass scale brands that are, let's call them the indie brands that
Right.
have big potential?
Well, I think there's also like this group of brands who are strictly D2C, right? They want nothing to do with retail. And I think,
Nothing. Yeah.
yeah, and it makes sense for certain products, there's no disputing that. But when it comes down to like a consumable, high volume product, to me, it's just obvious that there's big opportunity in retail. I would never, force some founder to sell in a channel that just really didn't feel right to them. That's personal choice. But if you're really trying to, like you said, hack your way, I like that. I'm going to use that more often. I think, really keeping an open mind to who your customer is key. I think it all
Yeah.
comes down to reaching more people, right? And with a product like deodorant, for example, most people use it. So there's big opportunity to tap into new user groups.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. What was your, historically, what was your first break? How did you get out of the local Oregon,
Yeah.
the how'd you go from flea market to mass market? That's a better way to ask the question.
Yeah, all sorts of breaks, I think. Number one, it was actually farmers markets, which I think sometimes the word,
Sorry, of
yeah, there were a couple of craft
course.
shows and things too, but I think that, enabled me to really connect with customers who were very discerning with ingredients and, brand loyalty and things. And so that helped, having those conversations. I had these built-in focus groups right in front of me every week.
Hmm.
And in doing that, people started to talk about the product or they would come back the next week for more. Retailers were hearing about it because customers were going into the stores and asking, can I find that Schmidt's deodorant here? And retailers were curious, what is this, right? And so it just started, word of mouth just kept spreading. And then, little breaks came along the way. I had a pretty early feature on TV,
Hmm.
which sort of came out of nowhere. And then that enabled me, it was on Fox, so the viewership was just very expansive. And so that enabled me to reach, a whole new community of people who were really interested in this idea of using something, healthier on their armpits. And then from there, just new opportunities. I really kept an open mind to everything. My philosophy along the way was always, say yes and then figure it out. And so in doing that, it just kept opening more doors for me.
Yeah, I bet. Very remarkable journey. Um, the brand name is that your maiden name or is that your husband's?
That's my maiden name. Yeah,
It is.
Yep. And
Very,
a
very
lot of my
good. It's
friends,
powerful. It's got
thanks.
some
I think so
authority to
too.
it.
Yeah, in the beginning, I was like, this is just a kind of an ugly, weird name to you, but I was using it
Yeah, I could never use my
as
last
a
name for
placeholder.
products. Yeah,
You never know.
too many syllables.
Yeah, right. The one syllable helps. But
Helps.
my friends called me Schmidt in high school. I started to embrace it, and I thought,
Ah,
and then I like as the company got bigger, again, it was sort of a placeholder at first, but then as the company got bigger, I thought, you know what, it's kind of too late to change it, and I like it, right? And it has solidified the legacy, which
I
is really
like it.
cool. Yeah,
It's easy to remember.
right.
No, it's good. I guess I could have a company called Dean's.
Dean's, there you go.
There's Dean's
Well, I
milk.
said Dean's deodorant.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I don't want to use Dean's deodorant. Get my own. No. So, so grew it to this amazing, remarkable, brand launchpad. Got it in, you know, probably not the thousands of stores it's in now. I probably didn't do that on your own, but scaled it up quite nicely. So how did you feel about releasing your company into a big corporate giant like Unilever, $60 billion in revenue over, I think, 400 brands the last time
Yeah.
yeah, how did that feel to like, ugh.
Oh, all sorts of feelings. I will say when I started the company, I never had plans to sell it. It just wasn't in my thinking. I just enjoyed what I was doing and never looked too far ahead. So when the opportunity came, it was, first just shocking, right? Like, wow, to know that my brand was being watched. I found out later after the acquisition that Unilever had been watching Schmidt's for like 3 years. So that
Right.
that was kind of fun. Um,
Yeah, they have a lot of scouts.
yeah. I mean, it was pretty incredible to think that my brand could join this family and just be, secure in a lot of ways that it wasn't before. Of course,
Yeah.
there's risks. You risk slowing your innovation, and you're joining this family of brands. So how do you fit in? I wasn't the first deodorant in the Unilever family, and so what did that mean in terms of where they were gonna, kind of squeeze me in their strategy? But I had a lot of conversations with them. In fact, I was talking to other big CPGs as well. So Unilever wasn't the only one on the table. So it gave me some choices, which was nice. Um, but I knew from those conversations that they were the right partner. They really valued the things that made Schmidt special. They did not have intentions in going in and shaking up things like our brand team and our product development. And that to me was really important. So I saw that Schmidt's could continue, in the spirit that it had always grown in, but also under this, really strong parent.
Yeah, and I haven't, having taken companies public myself and also exited and sold companies to large corporate behemoths. We call them BFSs, big, fat, and slows, and try to help them be faster and nimble. And but they had they've developed a decent track record. Like Dermalogica was on the program this
Mhm.
year, and totally autonomous, doing its own thing, but very different kind of channel strategy where you're more core to the got to get it on the shelves, and so you're competing with other other products in their portfolio. But what types of things do you still do with them? Are you still kind of like the face of the brand, or what are you up to?
Yeah. Yep. I'm still working with Schmitz. That's very important to me to stay connected, but I'm not involved operationally, which means I have a little freedom to do more.
Phew, I bet that felt good.
Yeah, it did. Growing the company as CEO and being responsible for everything, from kitchen with 0 employees to this, manufacturing space that I had personally built out with a team of 150 employees. There was just so much,
Constant
weighing on
stress,
me
7 days
constantly.
a
Yeah,
week. Yeah.
for sure. So, I'm very happy to still be connected and engaged, but also have time to do other things. So I've since,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you're very giving of your time, and you wrote a book,
Yep.
Supermaker, I think it's called.
Yes, I did. I never imagined being an author of a book. But after the acquisition, I realized my journey was really interesting and special, and I wanted to put it
Remarkable.
in
Yeah.
a pretty package, right, in a book. And so my goal in writing it was really to support other entrepreneurs, whether it was through, just the inspiration behind my story and how it all started and grew, but also with practical tips. I just wanted people to be able to read it and walk away with like information they could actually use. I know a lot of business books are really dense and are often told in a way that it's not backed up by storytelling. So for me, I
Exactly.
wanted everything to have, a nice case to back it up, right? Like I'm telling you to do this because I've been through it, and here's what happened to me.
Yeah, storytelling and emotion. It
Yeah.
probably all comes out. I haven't read it yet because you didn't send me my copy yet. Kidding, kidding. And did you have you had a lot of entrepreneurs reach out to you because of that, saying,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, that even, before the book and
I bet.
people reaching out to me was part of the inspiration behind the book. Because I thought, how can I reach the most people in the most, I guess, concise way, right? Because some people would come to me with really big questions, right? Like, I mean, really huge, like, how do I start a company and grow it and sell it to Unilever, right?
Yeah,
And, I could jump
in
on a
reverse order would be nice. What? No.
yeah. So I thought, well, if I put it in book form, I can say, read the book, and come back to me afterwards and let me know what questions you still have. And so that's been really cool I had someone reach out this morning who told me she'd read it 3 times, and she's always picking up something new. And I had someone tell me yesterday that, it was my fault that she started her business. And I thought that was the best compliment ever, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Isn't one of the themes like do it on your own terms? Is that
Yeah.
possible?
Yeah. The title is Supermaker, crafting business on your own terms. And what I mean by that is just, taking things at your own speed and not always following a playbook. I give you a book, right? But I don't consider it necessarily a playbook. Like you have to do this. It's more, here are some suggestions around this particular situation. So when I say on your own terms, I just mean like not obsessing over what other entrepreneurs are doing and just really, building it your own way.
Yeah, there's a lot of obsessing goes on and comparing, and
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you need to chart your own course on a variety of levels. Are you guys turning it into kind of a media play too? What's going on there?
Yeah, so I started the company Supermaker with my husband and business partner Chris.
Chris, yes.
Chris Cantino. It's a website too, right? So supermaker.com, and where we have a bunch of articles that support up and coming entrepreneurs. We've done some brand features. It was particularly helpful during COVID, where we would um, highlight entrepreneurs, tell their stories, and also give resources for dealing with all the stresses that have come along with the pandemic. But also through that, we launched the Entrepreneurial Dream Project, which is a grant program. And we did that in response to COVID. How could we be most supportive of people trying to build businesses during this time? Starting a company is hard enough, and then you have the pandemic, which just, a lot of people were just like, hell no, I'm not going there. And I wanted to keep the entrepreneurial dream alive. And so we
Yep.
launched this cool grant program. And it also has a mentorship component where we had 50 different mentors commit to working with 10 founders who were recipients of the award. And then there was a monetary component as well.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Good plan. Mentorship is so critical, especially. And did that lead to you and Chris started a fund? I think it's called Color.
Yeah, the two are separate. They certainly play off one another, but Color is independent of Supermaker. That came first. That was our first endeavor after the acquisition. And it's called Color, and we invest in consumer brands. We like to say the things people buy and the way they buy them. So CPG, but also the tech that supports it. Also marketplaces we're really interested in. And, we understood we could really have impact on these companies because we've been through it, and we're not just investors with money and opinions, we're investors with experience and, have been operators. So that I think really adds value.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you look for there in terms of company, entrepreneur, story, timing, early stage,
Yeah,
later stage?
it's not always easy to articulate. I'd say like I guess
Yeah.
our thesis is really, people that are I'm kind of tired of the word disrupting, right? But doing things
Yes,
in a way
definitely.
that's right, yeah, that's hasn't been considered yet for that industry. So innovation is challenging these days, right? Like it's really hard to come up with a product that hasn't been made before. So we look for innovation in, the distribution channels or the way that you're talking about the product or, who you think your customer could be. And I think Schmitz is like the perfect example. And it's funny because I never started the company with really laying out this, deep sort of vision like that, right? It kind of happened. And now looking back, it's like, this makes sense. And this is what I look for in other brands is, are you looking at distribution in a way that your competitors aren't? Are you talking about your product, in a way that just hasn't been talked about before? And do you have access? Are you considering customers, outside sort of the norm for this type of product? And so that gets us excited for other brands that we're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. And it's part of your story because you innovated on various tracks, and we teach this at Kellogg with our corporate accelerator programs. Like you can innovate on products, services, ventures. You can do channels, new markets, new customers, not just new products. So that's
Right.
actually most funds don't look at it that way. It's kind of refreshing. I'm one of the founding board members of 1871 in Chicago, so it's one of the largest incubators in the world, and so we have all different types of programs. Might be fun to plug you into, for people of color, female, all types of different. They're not just cohorts; they're real, sustainable long-term programs
Yeah.
to bring targeted companies to market. And
I'd love that.
have had some good companies come out of there, like Cameo and a bunch of others that are starting to rock and roll.
Nice. Yeah. And one thing I didn't mention about our fund, it's just become such a part of us that I don't always think to even mention is that, we do invest generally in underrepresented founders or founders who maybe are just, underestimated. Right. And so that started,
Underestimated. I like that.
yeah.
Yeah, a
Yeah. And that,
lot of us out there.
right. Yeah. Felt myself included. And I think, it was at the forefront when we started our fund is like, there are a lot of founders are being overlooked. So let's make that part of our mission and our vision. And then it became trendy, right? With last year's happenings and, around Black Lives Matter and things, all these funds were like, oh, how do we find deal flow that, reaches these communities? And for us, it was already just so built in. And so, by putting that out there in the earliest days, we've been surrounded by these types of founders who are bringing really cool ideas, to us. And so it's just a very natural thing now. And so I just think that's the trick for these funds and these VCs who are like, how do I get more deal flow by, women, people of color, or whoever? It's that's the answer, is just like surround yourself by these people and it'll generally come, right? Like it doesn't have to be this sought out thing.
Yeah, don't force it. Don't make
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, there's some serendipity to it, and there's some natural thing to it, but also
Mhm.
you need to have a bit of a calling. A lot of the funds and VCs and private equity groups are starting to get that. Others are.
Right.
It's about the money.
Mhm.
So let's see. Jumping around, I've got Jeff Hoffman coming on the show next week, and he told me that you and he are going to be mentors on the Going Public show, which I think is.
Yes.
I think you guys are taping next week in Miami. What's
Yep.
that all about?
Yeah. So this
Are you going public?
yeah, I'm taking my personal brand public. Who
There
wants
you
to?
go. That'd be the
That's a
first. It's a personal IPO.
that's a whole other conversation
You could
around.
do a SPAC. We'll talk later.
Well, BitClout. Have you heard of BitClout?
Yeah,
We don't need to get into that, but yes, I could take myself public.
everyone's googling that right now on the show. What are they
um,
talking about?
yeah. Well, this series Going Public is being streamed on Entrepreneur, and it's the first of its kind. It's a show that follows founders as they raise money, most with the plan to go public. And it's really cool because the viewers of the show will be able to invest in these brands as they watch in real time through an app. My role on the show is to be a mentor with Jeff. And yeah, I can't wait. The companies that have been announced so far are all very different and diverse, from one another. And so that's just gonna be really fun for viewers and for myself to have the opportunity to mentor these brands that are already very successful in their own right.
Right, right.
So
They're like beyond seed stage. And
right.
those
Yeah.
of you listening in, one of the big trends is the democratization of investing through a variety of different things. Everything from SPACs, which are these companies going public that can invest in anything. That's a fun job. Or just open platforms where you can invest in things. You'll even see it advertised on TV now, all types of, there's others, competitors to this one that you can just go and fund stuff. So, GoFundMe and a couple of others probably got kicked this off years ago, but it seems like it's going mass market. Hopefully people will be okay. Yeah, they always have to understand there's tons of risks involved. There's a reason there's
Right.
things called venture capital and private equity. They shield a lot of the the hits and the misses. Anyway, let's keep it positive though. I look forward to seeing you on the show.
Yeah.
So that's one trend. What other trends have you noticed in and around the sector coming out of the 2020 lockdowns from where? Yeah, what are you seeing next?
I think it's the way brands are communicating with their audience and with each other.
Mm,
Audio platforms are obviously becoming very huge. Clubhouse is a great example. I spend quite a bit of time on there, and it's a way, as an investor, it's great for discovering deal flow. I also really enjoy it as an opportunity to reach, my community of, I guess, followers, for lack of a better word. Through, my husband Chris and I will host rooms. We have a club called Club CPG on there. So we'll
hmm
host conversations that are industry related, current events sometimes, and having special guests on there, who have built their own brands. And it's just a great way to educate and help others, stay engaged and connected. So I think that's definitely trending. I think brands today need to be at least aware of these types of opportunities. And, maybe that means jumping on and hosting a room with your customers or, um, connecting with other entrepreneurs. I think that also is becoming kind of a hot thing, is just to, like, less competitive and a little more collaborative. I'm seeing a lot of that, especially in the beauty and personal care worlds. I'm a member of a couple different organizations with some pretty higher level leaders in that industry, and everybody just comes together and talks about their problems, and it's kind of refreshing just to see how we can support each other and be less competitive.
Yeah, I like that. What about consumer trends?
Yeah, this, I think about this a lot. I think we're probably trending a bit towards more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Less, oh God, the word just gave me, but I'd say less fluffy, less I think the core product that a brand needs to launch with is something that's very practical. That's the word I'm looking for, right? Practical. And something that you can just really build off of, right? So having this one core product that just makes sense for most consumers, and then from there, paying attention to what your customers are wanting, and then building products that are a little more, I guess, a little out there or risky and not and non-conforming. I don't know that the I don't know that the industry's changed a whole lot in terms of types of products coming to market. I think I think there's bigger problems surrounding some of these product launches, right? Like we have to make sure that our supply chains are intact. I think there's more things that could go wrong in that, but companies that are powering through it and coming to market, are working through issues that are like going to make them really strong brands going forward.
Yeah, we've noticed the Revive does a health, beauty, and wellness index, and we've seen the awareness and the interest level, but also the purchasing behavior of consumers, and everything from health, beauty, wellness, cosmetics, food and beverage, just more of a focus on healthy.
Right.
I don't know if it's healthy sounding or healthy. Like you said, is it an emotional thing? Is it a branding thing? But
Yeah.
the interest level is there. So your 10% figure, is it ever going to go to 50%? I mean, that's trillions of dollars around the globe. All these, if you add up all these markets, still
Right.
at the mass market level, there's an issue, scaling really good, healthy products.
And yeah, I don't think that's trending, or I don't think it's a trend, excuse me. I think it's becoming more of the norm, is going to really be a core part of
Yeah,
offerings from most brands. But I think 10 years ago when I started my business, that wasn't necessarily the case. It was still kind of unknown. Like, is this just kind of a passing thing that,
right,
people are somewhat,
right.
but I think it's pretty clear now. I think COVID just sort of solidified that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm primarily looking, and that's global data. If you look at the U.S., I mean, the U.S. is funny. They'll
Hmm.
say all types of things, and then a few years later, they're back to what they used to do. So we'll see
Yeah.
what the real math market goes. If you little advice for entrepreneurs here. I run a program called Dancing with Startups, where we help companies figure out, should I build it, should I buy it, should I borrow it and partner, and specifically targeting startups around the globe, around whatever they want to do over the next few years. So
Hmm.
what advice can you share for entrepreneurs, basically partnering with the right investors and the right corporate partners?
Yeah, I think, keep an open mind about who your customer is. I think that's just key when building. It's important to start with a niche and to really have a target that you're going after. But I think once you've established that, like really think big about, who might want to use your product, and don't make assumptions about who your customer isn't. I think a lot of times we get caught up in this idea of like, well, that person doesn't want anything to do with my product, or I'm not really interested in tapping that base. Like the real opportunity comes in reaching those little corners, those little pockets of customers that you didn't, necessarily associate with your product.
Yeah, I think you called them the underestimated, in consumer terms, the underserved, or
Yeah.
not, or not targeted. And you mentioned Clubhouse. What are some other ways for entrepreneurs, kind of like still COVID going on, to kind
Hmm.
of find new, unique ways to network, connect, especially
Yeah.
the early stage ones looking for a lot of funding.
I think there's a nice opportunity in some of these marketplaces too, and
Oh,
that's more connecting with your customer. But companies like Pop Shop, I have to admit, I'm an investor in them, but it's just what they're doing is really incredible. So it's
yeah.
basically a live marketplace that enables founders and brands to interact in real time with their customers, and to really just get on screen and talk about their product or their company and tell their story and answer questions in real time. So I think it's becoming increasingly important to have those connections with your customers.
Perfect.
And then in terms of networking, of course, there's Twitter and other social media platforms that are not slowing down by any means.
Awesome. Jamie, I really want to thank you for being on the program. Any parting advice for, I usually ask what was your biggest challenge? You've laid out like 29 challenges here that you just took on and beat down with a stick over the last 10 years. Any parting advice for these uh, either corporate types or
Yeah.
aspiring entrepreneurs coming together
I'd
as
say
you did?
just, take things at your own pace. Don't get too caught up in the competition. I mean, know what's happening around you, but don't obsess over it, and really stay focused on the vision that you have for your business. There's no right way, there's no playbook. Um, yeah, just, kind of listen to your intuition and let that guide you too.
Most entrepreneurs are very impatient. They want growth fast, and doesn't always, come at the pace that you want. So it's hard to be patient.
Yeah.
What's another thing for them to do?
It is hard to come on, dude. No, it's true. I think
I'm impatient right now.
all right, well here's something that really helped me. I think, being an entrepreneur is hard as hell, right? There's always something that's going to drag us down, and it's very easy to quit.
Yes.
So just always remind yourself, why you started, and you lose that as you go, right? You get caught up in the day to day. We kind of forget, like, that what we're doing is amazing, and it's what we wanted, right? Like, and so, for me, it was always two things that brought me back, to feeling inspired again. And one was this, the fact that, like, for the first time in my life, I was so happy with the work I was doing, right? Because I'd been on this soul searching journey for a long time to just be excited about my career. And then secondly was just that the customers needed me and they wanted my product, and I was changing lives. And sometimes it's just a matter of reading a customer testimonial and reminding yourself, like, what I'm doing is important, so I'm going to keep powering through.
Perfect. Thanks for a remarkable and inspiring story. You've been listening to Jamie Schmidt, the founder and former CEO of Schmidt's Naturals. This is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. Hope to see you soon.